Hey friends, how would you like a 4-day work week or a 4-day vacation? Both of those sound pretty good to me right now, but let me offer you this. How about a 4-day turnaround time on most popular apparel options? That's right, it's 4-day apparel from Jack Prince. No rush fees, no hassle, no BS, no problems. Jack Prince has got you taken care of in just 4 short days. That's right, the 4-day apparel. And we're not talking garbage tees, we're talking great stuff like the popular All Style, 1301, American Apparel, Next Level, Toltex, Gildan, and many, many others. If you need new shirts for your band or brand and you don't have time to wait for it, head over to jack.inc/4days and get your 4-day apparel, well, in 4 days. Oh, and that leaves so much more time for making sweet, sweet partying. Visit jackprince.com/circle of trust to save even more.
You're listening to the AID Network.
Coming to you live from the Saul Rosenberg Studios, broadcasting worldwide into all ships at sea, here comes another action-packed episode of Adventures in Design.
Design. Let's go to the tippy top of the ABC Disney building in Burbank. Let's sit in the corner office. Let's talk TV with the president of entertainment for ABC, Channing Dungey, on AID 819. Hey, I'm your host, Mark Bricky. Let's get started with today's episode. Friend, I am excited about today's episode. But before we get to that, let me ask you this. What's for dinner tonight? What do you feel like eating? Where you want to go? Huh? Where do you want to go? Mexican? No, we had that last week. You know, that nightshades make me feel bloated. Okay, well, let's get pizza. Let's just order in and get pizza. It's easy. No, I don't need the carbs. Okay, well, then let's just go down to 2nd Street and have a burger. No, not that place because they have a patio and it's kind of hot and I want to sit in the air conditioning. If you're like me, you know that one of the most difficult things to figure out in this world is what's for dinner tonight, right? What's for dinner tonight is the hardest part of having a family, having a relationship, having friends, having coworkers, because everybody has a wildly different opinion about where they want to eat dinner at tonight. It should be such a simple decision, but making one that makes everyone happy is damn near impossible. Now let's think about one of the most important dinners that we have of the year. Let's imagine sitting around the fireplace, sitting at the long table. Grandma's got out the nice china that sits in a cabinet all year long like an animal in the zoo. Don't touch that. Those plates aren't for you, you scumbag, until it's Thanksgiving, right? Thanksgiving dinner, all these weird relatives and boyfriends and girlfriends of young cousins that are just weird show up and you're like, oh boy. We're going to eat this food and try to find a conversation that doesn't get old racist grandpa all fired up, right? Like Thanksgiving dinner, we bring all these different points of our life. And hey, just because you share blood with somebody doesn't mean you share opinions with somebody. It doesn't mean that you necessarily like them, right? Family genetically chooses us. And so here you are, and you realize, hey, man, even though we're from the same plot of land and come from the same, we are all wildly different. And you try to sit around and figure out what's going to make everybody happy. What music do we put on? Do we put on a football game? Do we put on an early Christmas special? Do we watch the Macy's Thanksgiving Parade? Oh, no. Grandpa's getting fired up because the dancers seem a little bit too gay for him back in his day. I mean, that's real, right? I mean, that is real when you're around people that are outside of your bubble. It's so hard to come up with a conversation that stays kind of neutral or to find some entertainment that's not offensive, that everybody can kind of get into, but it's not too sexual so people don't feel weird, or it doesn't open up a weird conversation that you know that your uncle just simply can't handle. Aren't you glad that it's only the beginning of September and November so far away? Well, that scenario that I just worked you through, the idea of trying to make as many people, as many different people as possible happy, Welcome to the world of Channing Dungey. Today's guest, she's the president of entertainment for ABC. That means heavy is the head that wears the crown because she's picking what America wants to watch. Now, I have dreamed of this job. I love TV. I adore it. Every Monday on Comment Below, we explore it. We talk about it. You've heard my wild ideas on how things work. Like, to me, TV is a sport. The entertainment industry is just like football. There's so many different players. There's only so many networks. There's only so many people that make it into this rarefied air, and they just move around from team to team to team, and I love it all. But man, oh man, what I like isn't always what you like. And the ability, or thinking that you have the ability, to figure out what America in 2018 or 19 or 20, because that stuff's being worked on right now too. What do people want to watch? And on the other hand, when you realize what people do not want to watch, I'm sure many of us have had to fire somebody. It sucks. Doesn't feel good. You feel very sorry for them. And then in return, you end up feeling more sorry for yourself than them. But imagine giving the call to just be like, it's not your year. We got to let the show go. And you're telling one person that you know has to go tell 300, 400 other people, gig's done. Pack it up. Got to go elsewhere. Let's go find work elsewhere. This one's done. But these maniacs, they take the call. They're not defeated. They show back up in the fall. They show back up in the spring. They pop up someplace else because it's business and it's show business. And they all accept it. It is brutal. It's not easy. It's not kind. It's impossible sometimes to get called back. But other times it's hard to keep people away. It is an insane business that this city runs on. But don't tell Channing Dungey any of this, because for whatever reason, it hasn't affected her. Listen, I know her in another aspect of life. I have hung out with her. We have talked about TV. We talk about the shows that we love, and we talk about the things that we miss and the shows that we hate. I'm here to tell you, she can relate. She's on the level somehow in the world, and I don't know how, because I don't listen to other podcasts. I hate most podcasts. I'm having such a hard time getting in this Joe Rogan, Elon Musk thing, because I am bitter to my core that it's not me. But here she is in the eye of the hurricane, and she can watch the disruption. She can talk about TV shows. In fact, one time her and I got into a wild conversation talking about, what do we think Apple's going to do with television and entertainment? And in the middle of this conversation, I'm here to tell you, I absolutely 100% forgot that I was talking to a network president. When I first met her, I was very intimidated by her position, because it's like, whoa, I'm a guy that does this little bitty baby thing in the world of entertainment. And if she saw a spark in me, it could forever change my path. I mean, this is somebody that has the type of position where it's like, this is interesting. Let's explore this. Let's change somebody's world. But it doesn't come across that way. She's as normal could be. She just happens to spend her 70 hours a week in the top of the ABC Disney building, corner office, all the windows. And we did the interview in these chairs, 2 couches that face each other, big, nice, long, beautiful coffee table, 2 chairs at one end, 2 chairs at the other end. And we're having this interview, and I'm going, oh my God, this is the table. This is the table that fans like me think about, where you sit and you pitch, and they sit and talk about what they're going to put on the air. And then they sit and go, oh my God, this is a show we have to cancel because someone's done something that's cuckoo crazy. Like, I'm in the middle of the TV, not just on the other side of the glass that I talk about. We're sitting next to the tubes, pretending that there's still tubes in there. We're sitting next to the circuit boards. And it just blows my mind that someone can hang out, take the time to talk to Adventures in Design, and have a conversation that's this real, that can remain a fan, that can talk about her craft, and literally share to each of us what she thinks that she did to make history, and be at this high level of success. Okay, AID fun fact. Normally, I would never ever point something like this out. But in the current times that we live in, you got to celebrate your victories where you can find them, right? If for any other reason you got to celebrate the victories, just inspire yourself to keep up the good fight. You know, a lot of times on this show, we give America a lot of shit. And it's hard not to, right? It's hard not to get upset, and it's hard not to react to all the headlines that are always around us. It's really easy, and I'm a victim of this. It's so easy to get mad at the minute. And every day seems to have a couple of those minutes that makes you really mad. But every now and again, if you take a breath and you take a step back and you don't focus on the minute that's in front of you, but when you step back, you look at the moment that's all around you and you see things from the big picture, it often can look quite different. So think about this. The most powerful guest we've ever had on the show in 819 episodes, over 4.5 years, and 1,500 hours of people talking, the biggest guest, the most powerful guest in the entertainment industry we've ever had on the show is today's guest, who happens to be an African-American woman who set history, and that's fucking awesome. Hey, America, you're going to be all right as long as we keep producing folks like Channing Dungey. Let's jump right into our conversation. It's Channing Dungey of ABC on AID 819. Channing Dungey.
Yes.
Welcome to Adventures in Design.
Thank you for having me.
Let me start off by saying, I know you didn't have to do this. I know this isn't something you normally do, and I cannot thank you enough for coming on to the show and giving us some of your valuable time, because you're a busy person.
Well, you know, I am, but this is actually fun. I have been listening to a lot of podcasts lately, and so it's kind of fun to actually be on one.
Well, I watch a lot of TV, so it's kind of fun to be inside of the TV. I'd love to ask you this. When you get promoted into your position, which exactly is...
My position is president of entertainment at ABC Network.
Wow. That's a big job.
It's a pretty big job.
It's a really big job. And like, I don't mean to start out the interview being Debbie Downer, but that's the type of job that when you take it, you're like an NFL head coach. You come in, you're at the top. It's a lot of glory. It's a lot of name recognition. For many reasons, you're going to go in the history books for when you took your position. But it's also a job that has a high turnover rate.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
So what is it like to get promoted to the top, but then be like, holy shit, where do I go from here?
It's like that old game, King of the Hill, remember that?
Yeah. Because once you're on top, now everybody's coming after you.
Yeah. I mean, look, there are some people like Kevin Riley who has had sort of the top job at, I think, 3 different networks so far. Mm-hmm. So that's an opportunity, right? You can certainly kind of hop from the one to the next to the next. You know, for me, this was never necessarily on my list of things I have to do.
Right.
You know, I used to joke around with my predecessor, and he'd say, well, someday when you're in my job, and I was always like, I don't want your job, because I love the creative. I love being really close to the development of the material. You know, this experience, though, for me has been so illuminating in so many ways. It's been really an exciting opportunity, and I feel like when this run ends, there'll be something else great on the other side.
Well, I think that's a really good way to look at something that's so big, right? Like, it's just kind of a wild job. Like, maybe you got it because you weren't seeking it, and it kind of fell into your lap because you were keeping your head down and you weren't gunning for it. You think that might be a part of the action?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I think the part of there were things about this job that I looked at from a distance and was really intimidated by. I was really, the idea of getting up on, you know, stage at Lincoln Center to do the upfront presentation just felt like that's not happening. And, you know, to have to do the press interviews at the TCA, that's not happening.
Yeah.
And then suddenly you find yourself in this role, and then you're doing those things. And now, I mean, this year, this was my 3rd year doing the upfront. And this year I kind of came to it with an attitude of like, let's go, let's put on a show. And I would have never thought that I would have had that perspective, but it's something that kind of comes with having done it. You know, I've never been skydiving, but people who have been say, after you do it, all you want to do is go again.
I don't believe it. And I'll never be able to. Like, when I see people who skydive, I'm like, you have children. That is,
I know.
That is not responsible jumping out of a plane when you have children.
Yes.
All right. So this is why your job's also like being an NFL head coach. because everyone thinks they can do better than you.
Yes, that is correct. That is correct.
You're given the task to try to decide what does the most amount of people want to watch this fall. That's not an easy decision to make.
It's not. And it's also, there are so many different pieces to it, because I was one of those people. When I was running drama here at the network, we would do our pilots, and then we'd go through screenings, and then senior management would lock themselves in the room to do the setting of the schedule. And from where I sat, I was like, well, this is easy. Like, how hard can it be? Like, just, this is the schedule. Let's go do it. And the first year that I actually sat in that scheduling room, you realize how hard it is. I call it scheduling Jenga, because it's sort of every show that you put into place, there are repercussions in terms of how it affects the rest of the schedule and how much each episode costs, and sort of so first you have to like build the schedule that you think will be maximized in terms of ratings.
Right.
Then you build the schedule that you think will be maximized in terms of revenue.
Right.
Those two things never agree. Like, they literally never agree. And then you're kind of looking at flow through the night, which still does matter in broadcast.
Yeah.
And even in this time shifted era in which we live, the flow throughout the night still matters, and sort of how you group the shows together.
Flow throughout the night is
from like 8
lead-ins.
p.m. through to 11. Yes,
Okay,
yes.
okay.
And then kind of what's happening at 11 that leads into the local news.
Right.
And that's particularly important, because our affiliates and our own stations have a very strong point of view about what we're programming at 10 o'clock.
Right.
So you're trying to balance out all these different things, and every time you think you've got it, there's always like, oh, nope, but if we do that, then this, and now we have a lot of shows where we do limited numbers of episodes. Most of the time it's because of certain actors, where
Right.
they have a cap on how many they're willing to do. And that's just a repercussion, because the world we live in now, where streamers are doing, 8 episodes, 10
Right.
episodes, it's harder and harder to get people who want to do 22 episodes of a broadcast show.
Well,
So
when
that adds to it also.
When I first got obsessed with this renaissance of TV that we've been riding for the last decade, I was like, I'm burning through all the US TV. What's on the other side of the pond? So I started watching UK TV, like Sky stuff and BBC stuff, before it got syndicated in the States.
Okay.
I'm like, 6 episodes?
Yeah.
4 episodes. Luther, are you really that busy? Like, you're on The Wire a lot more than you are on Luther. But I mean, I guess the peacoat needs a break. But I was starting to look at TV in the U.S. and be like, my Lord, 26 episode season, 12 up front, 12 on the backside. Like,
Yeah.
what an overcommitment. And I was wondering, like, can they go on at this pace forever?
Well, I mean, I think the question is yes and no. I think when it comes to half hours, because most of our half hours we do 24 episodes a season. 26 is really hard. I mean, that just from a time schedule, it's just hard to get those all in.
Sure.
But most of our half hours we do 24. Modern Family, I think, does 23. And with half-hour shows, it's a little bit easier. With multicams, it's actually really easy. We just don't
Right.
have as many of those on our schedule as some of
Right.
the other networks do. With dramas, it's harder and harder. And when I was working in drama as an executive, you would go through this, and I would always feel like there's that slump that happens around, between episodes 15 and 17, where you're kind
Yeah.
of trying to grind
Yeah,
through it, and
yeah.
then you have that crest as you're going into the end of the season. And that's one of the reasons why now everyone wants to do fewer, because the storytelling can be deeper, richer, more complex if you're not telling quite as many. If it's a straight procedural, it's not as difficult to replicate those, and kind of do 22, 23. But with some of the more complex, character-driven, serialized stories, it's hard to do a great 22-episode season. And you're being compared always
Sure.
to these 8, 10, 12-episode seasons.
Well, I mean, that's one of the things I want to talk about today, is that you are at a clear, I don't want to say disadvantage, but the playing field between the 4 major networks and all the other guys, it's just not an equal playing field at all.
No.
And as I tried to look over what advantage do you guys have over them, the one thing that I could come up with, which is kind of very ironic, is none of those guys have found a model for advertisers. So commercials, the thing that we've always liked the least about TV, might be the thing that saves TV.
Well, commercials is definitely something that helps us in terms of, yes, that is something that keeps us in demand. Advertisers need
Sure.
advertising. And, they just had another study come out where they were saying that digital advertising, people are backing away from that because they're feeling like it's less effective. And there was a point at which everyone was thinking it was going to be more effective because it's just sort of like right there. But our upfront this year was actually still very robust because people do believe in linear advertising. But I would argue that one of our strengths is scale. and reach, because we're still free to air in every household in America.
Right.
And there was a really funny article, I think it was in the Wall Street Journal, where a bunch of young millennials and whatever the generation is below them.
I think it's Y or Z. I'm not really sure.
I think it might be Z.
Or Z if you're in Canada.
Yeah, exactly. Discovering that you could actually just get a pair of rabbit ears and get television for free. Like, this was a revelation to them.
Oh, I've seen the things where they pick up a phone and they hear the dial tone and they go, "What's that?"
Yeah, exactly.
That's insane. Like, your kids will never know what a dial tone is.
Not at all. So, yeah, so that's one of the big advantages, that we are free to air and that we have a broad reach. You know, we are still in basically, you know, almost every single household, right? So that's a potential of 98 million or something like that viewers that you could get. The other advantage that I think that we have is that we do have the opportunity to, how do I say, whatever we're doing kind of all at the same time. You know, so if somebody's watching a show on ABC, it's all happening for everyone on the same pace, on the same schedule.
Right.
So there is a consistency of conversation, right? The notion of something being water cooler, you know, there was that really funny SNL skit that they did about the friends that go to brunch and they can't talk about any TV because everyone has only watched like...
Right, everybody's at a different moment in time.
Yeah. You know, don't talk about that, don't spoil it. You know, like here, like we've aired an episode of Grey's Anatomy, it's aired. Everybody's got it. It's all the same. You can all be kind of in lockstep, right?
But boy, it is hard being on the West Coast, though.
It's a little hard, yeah.
Especially when they encourage the live tweeting on the East Coast. I'm like, AMC, calm down.
I know.
We don't even see Walking Dead for 2 more hours.
I
And
know.
you guys are giving away everything right now. It's like the phone in the drawer moment.
Yes.
So does that mean that our strong point and why Robert Mills has all the job security in the world is that live is still going to be the cornerstone? Like, nobody's going to download and marathon a season of college football.
Right.
You know, like you guys Saturday night, you have everyone sitting in front of the TV that has a TV on watching ABC.
Live is still the main, right? And I think about live, and I also think about broadcast is television that people watch together.
Yes.
Right? And so whether it is live, which is our preference, obviously, or even delayed within the same day or within the first 3 days, I'll take any of those.
Yeah.
But broadcast shows are shows people watch together. So whether it's sports, whether it's live, like the stuff that Rob does, you know, Dancing with the Stars, or even stuff like Bachelor, you know, it's not a live show, but it's something that people, they gather at homes, they like open wine, they go to bars, they watch The Bachelor, they talk to the screen. And the same thing is with our comedies. In particular, families watch those comedies together. Streaming is something that people tend to do on their own. Your Netflix playlist is yours, not the same as your wife's. Not that, you know.
You're right, because on the show we do have the term wife watcher.
Yeah.
And there's a problem in a relationship where, like, if you can't commit to watching 3 more of these, you're getting kicked off the show.
Yes.
But you're right, network TV is more of a moment that brings us together.
We look for shows that will encourage that kind of community.
Hey, friends, we'll get right back to our conversation with Channing Dungey today on AID 819. But first, I wanted to let you know that in the Circle of Trust, we have several other episodes with people that have decided to take their talents into the entertainment industry. From managing music for TV shows, from being the guy that figures out what goes live on unscripted television, and from people that gave themselves permission to learn the art of licensing and learn how to make merchandise, or be the person that figures out, okay, we own The Walking Dead. How do we make all the merch to sell it out to the fans that go to all these cons year after year? We've got a lot of different conversations from people that have figured out that they love music so much that they're the one that can pick the bands that everybody wants to listen to and go down the world of A&R, or people that know that they're good at math and they can't play an instrument, so they manage the bands. So many different conversations about entertainment, and they all exist in our archive of over 800 episodes. Sign up today at AIDpodcast.com. Dig around. You never know who you'll find or what you'll find out. Adventures in Design is supported by its listeners just like you. I appreciate if you sign up today at AIDpodcast.com to hear the full version of today's episode and unlock our archive. Let's get back into our conversation with Channing Dungey of ABC. All right, so then a question I have for you is, because the accessibility of ABC is massive.
Yes.
Do we program as specific as possible, trying to catch, like, because on the network, there's a couple of shows that are just super dialed in to like a certain demo.
Okay.
Blackish, Goldberg's, Fresh Off the Boat, and the upcoming Grand Hotel.
Yes.
All 4 of those fit into a very strong classification.
Yes.
Is that the move for network TV, to make something really, really specific, and for 30 minutes, like, kind of not try to capture everybody, but go after a solid demo?
So the idea behind each of those shows, particularly the 3 comedies, but I would say Grand Hotel also,
Yeah.
we're looking for shows that are specific in their point of view, but universal in their worldview, right? And we do every year, our research department does these deep dives into sort of what the audience is watching and how they relate to it and whatever. And they show us videos of people that they've interviewed so we can kind of get a sense of all of this.
Fascinating.
And they're, so one of the households that they visited was a single parent, African-American family, teenage son who was like 17, and then 2 younger siblings. They were talking about what they watch together, what they watch individually. And this guy, this 17-year-old black guy, says his favorite show is The Goldbergs. He's like, because of all the shows you guys have, that mom reminds me of my mom, right? And that would not be on paper maybe the show that you would have pinpointed for that guy, but he's recognizing his mom in that mom, and therefore it becomes, it's a very specific family in The Goldbergs, but the stories that we're telling have a universal appeal.
Right.
And so that's kind of what we try to do with all of our programming, because for us, success does rely on having a pretty broad audience, right?
Yeah.
For a show, we had 18 million viewers last year for The Good Doctor, and the only way
is that
works,
18 million per or over the span of time?
18 million over the measured period.
Okay.
So for one episode over the measured period.
Okay.
And that is, you only get there if you've got men and women, old and young, tuning in. Right. And everybody's watching it for a different reason. And I think that when you think about what we're doing with our family comedies, what we're hoping to do with Grand Hotel, this is sort of a return to kind of some of our bigger, splashier, fun, soaps where the character's like, no, they did not just do that. They did not just go there. I can't believe this is happening. And yes, the family at the center is Latino, but it's not a Latino family story. It's a story in which the family happens to be Latino, if that makes sense.
It totally makes sense. And the way that I see these type of shows working is, how do you get people to watch TV now? Because it used to be you wound down your day, dad was in charge of the remote control, because nowadays kids control the TV, but back in my day, dad controlled the TV.
Yes.
And dad would flip through 4 options and land on the one that spoke to him. But I feel like now a big part of the strategy is, how do we get people there? And so all these shows billboard very well. And living in LA, we know the power of the entertainment industry on our billboards and our buses and taking over the city.
Yep.
And this is my favorite time of year, because all of a sudden everything around us is TV oriented. It's everybody saying, watch us, watch us. And I feel like all of these shows billboard well to get out of the gate, but like, this is our demo, this is who we're looking for. Once they're there, then there's probably that like cross-genre discovery, right?
Yeah, that's the hope, right? I think it is. It's pretty intense at this time of year, just getting people to pay attention, because there are just so many shows everywhere you turn. Everything is launching, and there's a lot of noise.
Yeah.
And yes, we are doing a lot of advertising still, outdoor bus stops, but we're trying at this point to be a little bit more creative in how we reach the consumer. And we are doing a fair amount of digital outreach, because we can sort of pinpoint very specifically, if you're a fan of this kind of show, you're going to be a fan of this, and we need to come find you, even if you're not watching ABC. The power of our on-air promo is still our most successful avenue to.
Well, you've already got them in the shop.
Right.
Tell them other things to buy.
That's right. But we have to go out and find other people who aren't necessarily watching ABC who might be right for this show or that show.
Yeah. Well, speaking of ABC, exactly how far are we right now from Bachelor Nation?
How far are we?
Yeah, or is that like a floor down or down the hallway? I'm just curious.
Well, Rob's office is about 8 or 9 offices down that way. And,
so we're really close to Bachelor
Nation. We're really
Nation.
close, yes.
And see, I think that those type of shows, though, are so important and where network shines.
Oh, absolutely.
Because it's the only type of thing that you can do on a network. And to some degree, I don't want water cooler TV to ever go away, because I get worried that if we already seen how divisive the country can be.
Yes.
Our entertainment is sending us off into more little portals.
I know.
And it gets hard to find people to just talk about your show with.
Yeah, the long tail has gotten so crazy. And we were talking about this actually this weekend, because the long tail of music, right? And at one point this weekend, they had the 80s countdown was on, and it was playing the greatest hits from 1981, Sirius on the 80s on 8 channel. And the idea that in 1981, that's a bizarre lineup of songs, because you go from everything from gospel to folk to rock to pop.
Never will happen again.
Right, never will happen again. But it was also like every single person knew all of those songs.
Yes.
All of them.
That's all the options we had. And this is the guy that I think is the biggest anomaly that we'll never see again. Phil Collins.
Yes.
He was a middle-aged, overweight, bald guy on the top of the charts.
Totally.
Could you imagine today, hey, coming out to the VMA Awards, Phil Collins,
Right.
and everybody going nuts, but oh, get Post Malone off the stage. We want to see more Phil Collins. Like,
Right.
Phil Collins is the trophy for Never Will Happen Again.
Yes.
Sorry to be mean to PC, but he was a man that rose in the moment. And I like you. I look at media in those times and go, this can never be replaced.
Never can be replaced, and so I think what's exciting about the long tail, right, is that you as a consumer are super served, and it's constantly like if I'm on Spotify, it's like you recently listened to this, you're going to like this,
Right. Right.
and it will, you can kind of fall down the rabbit hole of being super served to things that only Channing wants, but it's also very lonely
It
in
is.
that little bubble.
It is.
Right? And that is one of the reasons I do believe so much in broadcast, bringing it back around, because it is great to have shows that everyone can watch together, that everybody can talk about, that are happening also in real time. And it's interesting when you talk with creators about streaming. There's a lot of enthusiasm for like the sky is the limit and we can do this and we're not subject to broadcast standards and we're not subject to having to write to commercial breaks and the episodes don't have to be a standardized length. This week it could be 42 minutes, next week it could be 57. Those are all the great parts. But there's a little bit of the, oh, yeah, I put it out there and like everybody watched it in like the first weekend and now it's over. Like we worked on that for 6 months and now, okay.
How do you keep up?
Yes.
People burn through Stranger Things
so
in
fast.
a weekend.
Yes. And I remember like I was a huge, I'm a consumer of television, but it's not often that my husband and I like something equally well. And we were both huge fans of Mad Men. And like Mad Men Sundays were like a thing. Like we would make dinner, get the bottle of wine,
Totally.
sit down,
We were doing the
watch
same
it,
thing.
right?
Yeah.
And then afterward, you're talking about it. Like as the week goes on, you're thinking about it. You're sort of anticipating it, and then there you are back again on Sunday. And I think that there's something that's getting lost in this idea that all the content is there for you right now. Like the anticipation of the next episode, like that's something that I actually think has value, right?
I do too. And as somebody who does this show, 200 times a year, I piggyback on you guys.
Yeah.
Like I watch your calendar and go, okay, this is a week to disappear. Because I think if they know that it's time to just kind of show some live events and kind of burn off a little bit of calendar, they know that now's not the time that people are around,
Right.
consuming media. So to a large degree, I kind of follow the network model of when to go hard with my guests, with my programming, and when to sort of pull back on the throttle, because you do realize all times of the year aren't the same.
Right.
So you can have something as great as a Mad Men, but if you don't put it in the right 13 weeks, it can sometimes be all for none. Let's do this for a second, because I can't resist.
Yeah.
Give me some president notes, TV network president notes on the final episode of Mad Men.
Oh, wow.
Give me some notes. Would you let that go out the door?
I found the final episode, I found it somewhat satisfying, but I was not happy where all the characters ended out.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Right? And I also felt, I know that they probably had the vision of him sitting on that, yoga thing with the Coke theme playing in the background.
Right.
Sort of an ironic wink and it was a very classic moment. I don't know that it was the most satisfying final moment for me in a show. And I was really disappointed with where they landed with Peggy. I got to be honest.
Peggy was the wild ride. She was the dark horse of the entire series.
I know.
And it's one of those things, and I'm sure you've seen this before, it's like when a TV show starts out, you all have an idea of where it's going to go.
Yeah.
But then it becomes part of the culture.
Totally.
And then everybody says, no, it's not about Bart. It's about Homer. And then there's this shift where somebody becomes the star. Yeah, you bring up a good point. This is what I would love to discuss with you. I think that you judge a TV show or TV series on its final episode. And the thing that I'm always looking for, and explain to me why we don't see this sometimes, is sometimes, and there's this new trend that irritates me. It's the final season. I've invested in this show. It's become a part of my life for 3, 4, 5 years.
Right.
We get in the final season and they just start giving me new characters, opening up new storylines. I feel like the reason why I'm going to spend 7 years with these people is because I'm going to see a very definitive time capsule of their life.
Yep.
There was a reason why the camera turned on, and there was a reason why the camera went away. And I was embedded with Baltimore for The Wire for a very important reason, or with, Mad Men for a very important reason. In the last season, when it gets wild and they start coming up with new characters, I'm like, no. I was fine with who we already had.
Right.
I don't want more. I want to see kill everybody off. Let's blow up this thing.
Right.
Now's the time to go in heavy. And I see a lot of conservative final seasons. Why would that happen sometimes?
Well, I think, look, everything happens for different reasons. Sometimes you don't know. Every once in a while, you don't know that it's the final season.
That's
right?
the hard thing about TV is the pacing.
Yes, right. And so, I mean, with a lot of these, I mean, I think, Matt Weiner had a tremendous amount of control with what he was doing with Mad Men. And I think that there were others where they kind of said, okay, I know we're going to work towards this. I mean, we had that with Lost, talking about controversial final seasons, right? And
glad you didn't have this job that day.
No, well, I was overseeing. That was when they had current and development being the same, and I was overseeing sort of drama at the network for that final year. So it was actually the only year of my tenure with the company that I worked on Lost myself. And I remember we knew we were going into it that it was going to be the final season, and then when we finally got to the point of watching the last episode, and they brought all the sort of key executives over to this, screening room over on the lot to watch it.
God, I'd love to be in one of those moments.
It was pretty great.
Pause for just a second.
Yeah.
You guys see the last episode.
Yeah.
What's the space in between when I see it?
With Lost, it was pretty tight. I want to say that it was maybe like 3-4 weeks.
So you're walking around with that in your back pocket for 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Oh,
well, and we'd seen the script, right?
Yeah.
On the red paper with the, you can't Xerox it and the whole thing, And I actually felt like the end episode, it was powerful for me in watching it, and I was one of the people, they had boxes of Kleenex. I was one of the people that grabbed at it, That was such an unusual show that I felt like they ended it in a way that to me felt true to the spirit of the story that they'd been telling. A lot of fans did not feel that way, and I think that one of the reasons people struggle so much with sort of how they want to end the show is this feeling that now audiences take ownership of the shows to such a degree, right? And the way that you can become a mega fan via social media, online, your Tumblr, you're this, you're that, it's a lot different. It's a lot more different now than it was 25, 30 years ago.
Oh,
where you just
totally.
kind of ended a show. But then there are still some season finales that, like, I remember the final episode of MASH. Right?
Yeah,
that was like a bananas great episode, like so well done, and in fact, I think still holds the record.
Super Bowl numbers.
Yeah, for the of scripted television, the largest viewing audience of scripted television, which we won't ever see again. And then there are others like the Seinfeld final episode, which was like.
Yeah, they did a clip show.
And then they were all in jail or whatever. I don't know. It was random, right? So it's a hard thing. It's a hard thing to build to. But anyway, you were asking about throwing in a bunch of other characters. I think sometimes what happens is that people don't know that it's the last season when they start out. They're trying to add these characters in order to give,
new
what
spark.
they had, new life. And then if the new spark doesn't take, then suddenly it's ending. And, in other cases, I think maybe they're just running out of story and they're trying to figure out how to stretch to the end.
Right. I mean, that seems the difficult thing about TV versus any other form of media is like, if we're going to produce a movie, we know how much time we have, how much budget we have, and we tell the story accordingly. Lost was a surprise hit.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, the network's going, let's stretch this, baby. Like, let's keep this going.
Well, that's how you get to the season where the island hopped through time.
Yeah. But I can understand that. I understand it from all parts.
Yes.
Like, to get a show off the ground and to have it be a hit.
Right.
You don't want to let that go. And so then you have to play with the creative and sort of stretch it out. And it's really, TV is the only, like, you never have to stretch out an album.
Right.
Or, sometimes they bring movies back. I mean, who knew that the Fast and the Furious could live on so furiously?
Yes.
But I understand that it's a weird thing. And as a fan, you have to, I think as a TV fan, you have to be willing to accept a lot. Mm-hmm. And I always try to understand how it works to accept a lot. Mm-hmm. And I think the hardest thing for us on our end of the glass is the new showrunner. When you love a show, when it's cut from a certain template, and all of a sudden I'm in Baller season 4, and extreme sports are coming in. We're in California, not Miami. Russell Brand's a regular character. And all of a sudden I'm like, what am I watching?
Right.
This was like foreplay for the NFL.
Yeah.
And it was that entourage, male fantasy. What if it all went right for you and your friends? And that, to me, is always the moment in a show when you're like, what are we doing here? Do people just get bored or burnt out? Or do you see a potential to bring somebody in and bring a show to life or to hit a demo that you're not getting? How does the new showrunner work?
There are so many reasons why you have a new showrunner coming in. I mean, sometimes it's the person is burnt out. Sometimes it's the person is having, whatever personal issues might be, forcing them to step away. Sometimes it is, yes, that the creative feels like it's come off the rails. And so you're hoping that by bringing somebody new in, you can work on it. Sometimes it's because the showrunner and, an actor or actress have, come to loggerheads. And so you have to make a decision about who stays and who goes. I mean, there are literally as many different reasons for why that happens as there are, different kinds of shows.
Right.
In the years that I've been in this business, I've been privy to almost all of them.
Yeah.
Right? And it's a hard thing because one of the things we do invest in as when I'm sitting there trying to make a decision about what shows I want to take from pilot to series, and you're looking at this great pilot, but then I'm always thinking about the auspices, like who's going to be behind the scenes, who's going to be keeping the trains running on time, do I have confidence in their creative voice and vision? And if you say yes, and then suddenly, and we've had this like midway through the first season, the person is floundering. It's disappointing because you bought into that voice and vision. And if
Right.
you have to make that change, it's never anything that you want to do.
Right.
And I think that sometimes things can, there's been a lot of arguments. Like I was a huge West Wing fan, right?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of discussion about the Aaron Sorkin years and then the John Wells years. And
Major change.
Major change, but still a lot of what I felt as a fan, because I was only a fan of that show, the heart and the DNA of the show still remained largely intact, right?
Yeah.
But there are others where there are big changes that are made, and you just feel like the whole thing's just taken an abrupt left turn into a totally different place.
Yeah, and those are the ones where, as a fan, you're like, "What am I even getting into right now?"
Yeah.
And I'm such a completist that I have a very hard time letting go.
Oh yeah.
Like I rode that Nashville train from ABC over to TMZ or whatever CMT.
Yes,
Thank you.
I love that. Nashville was my baby. It was a bummer for me that we had to let it go because we just couldn't come to a financial situation. But I love that.
Not
show.
a cheap show to make, I'm sure.
Yeah.
In a weird, bizarre way, it's maybe the only time in history where a show has lost a major character and gotten better for a run. It fell apart disastrously in the end. But there was a moment when Connie Britton, spoiler alert, left the show that I'm like, wow.
Yeah.
Like they really captured the absence of death. Because so many times on TV we focus about the act of dying.
Yeah.
But really it's going into that person's home when they're no longer there. Where you're like, oh man.
No, totally.
They're really gone.
They're gone.
All right.
I think Grey's Anatomy did that really well too. Like I never would have imagined that we could have had Grey's Anatomy. Meredith and Derek were sort of like the iconic couple at the center of that show. And
How many seasons now?
this fall is going to be season 15 when we launch in September. And I think this is now going to be the 4th season without McDreamy.
Yeah.
It might even be the 5th, but it's definitely the 4th. And you would have, if you'd asked me way back, like, could the show survive without Derek? I would have said no. I mean,
Yeah.
Meredith and Derek are iconic, and it's actually continued to be still terrific.
But good shows become they're family members.
Yes.
They're people that we really care about and we connect with them. So if their voyage, like I was so fascinated to see how many TV shows reflected the economic meltdown of 2009, and 2008. And about the time that it caught up with me and my family and our little small business, I was watching Friday Night Lights going, Coach, I need a speech. I'm in the lowest spot of my professional career. I need you to talk to me this week, Coach Eric Taylor.
Yes.
And I think when TV does that is when it does really well. Because I've learned through doing this is people always want to see their story in somebody else's. That's when it really resonates. So with that, when the pilots get laid out in front of you, what do you look for? Like, can you put your taste on a shelf and try to think like America? Which who even knows what America is anymore to think that way?
No, I mean, look, you have to, a lot of it's about good storytelling, right? And I have definitely put in my 10,000 hours and then some when it comes to sort of understanding story. So that for me is the first thing. Does it grab me when I'm reading the script back in the pilot pickup time? Now when I'm watching the cut, like, am I compelled? Am I interested in this world? Am I interested in these characters? Am I leaning forward? Do I want to learn more? So that's the first piece. Then the second piece is, how do I feel about these characters? Because as you said, they become kind of part of your family. You're, as opposed to a movie, because you can handle almost anything in a movie because you're going to go do it for 2 hours. It's at arm's length, and you drive home and you can put that behind you.
TV has ruined movies for me.
Really?
When I go see a movie now, it feels too accelerated.
Ah.
I'm used to the long grind. I'm like, wait, they already had the baby? They just had sex in the backseat of the car 30 seconds ago, and now they're pushing around. Like, they have to move the story along.
Yes.
And I've gotten into the slow grind.
Yes,
So
yes.
movies are almost broken because it just seems like, what is that? The Yellow Book, when you wanted to cheat in school, you didn't
Oh,
want to...
yes, Cliff Notes.
Cliff Notes.
Yes, yes,
It seems
yes.
like narrative Cliff Notes for me.
Yes. Well, somebody once said to me that great movies capture a moment in time and great television captures a lifetime, right?
That's great.
Right. And I think, there's certainly, examples of fantastic movies that are wide spanning in their time periods, but I do feel like there's something about that, about being really able to sit with a character as they're going through some sort of a situation or a crisis or a journey, which makes for a great film. And
Yeah.
then over, with television, you kind of let them unfold, right? Someone else said another kind of analogy to that, or I don't know if that's the right word, but they were talking about a character like Sipowicz on NYPD Blue, and how unless you were making a movie about Sipowicz, if he were in the movie, he would be reduced to just a series of cliches.
Right.
Right? Like
Right.
slightly balding, overweight, alcoholic with a bad temper, you know what I mean? And then you're like, oh yeah, that's it, that's Sipowicz, right? But when you watch all of the seasons of NYPD Blue, what emerges is such a fully layered, multi-dimensional character who never ceases to surprise you
Right.
in the way that people always surprise
You
you.
never do that in a movie.
No, you
don't
can't.
have the space.
There's no space.
Yeah.
There's no space. But anyway, so I'm looking at good storytelling. I'm thinking about how I feel about the actors and the cast and the journey of those characters.
When you
And
read
they
it,
don't have
are
to be-
actors already assigned?
No, but I mean,
Okay.
we were talking kind of both about the scripts and then also the finished pilots.
Yeah.
So every once in a while, we're doing a project where the talent is attached even at the pitch stage. Sometimes they're attached when we're picking
We know
up the
Kiefer
pilot.
Sutherland's available.
Yeah, well, he came in.
Think of him on this.
He came into the designated survivor pitch.
Yeah.
Because he was already attached, and Nathan Fillion was attached to The Rookie, which we have this year, Scott Foley to Whiskey Cavalier. But usually we start to put the cast in place after we've picked up the pilot.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm thinking about the story. I'm thinking about the actors. I'm thinking about, do I want to live in this world week to week?
Yes.
Right? And do I want to come back to this world week to week? Right? And there are some shows that I love, like I love Ozark.
Oh, man.
Right?
Jason Bateman's best work.
Yeah, but that is a hard show, I think, for broadcast.
It is.
I think that Ozark is best consumed when you can watch multiple at a go.
It's also hard for fans because, all right, if I hit play on this,
Yeah.
I'm going down the
Going
trenches.
deep,
I'm
yeah.
going to dark places, and
Yes.
it's going to emotionally put me in awkward situations.
Yes.
So you're right. There is something about, like, this is just heavy. Like, The Handmaid's Tale, I still haven't started.
Oh, really?
I know that I have to.
Well, here's the thing. I loved season 1.
Yeah.
And then I watched the first 2 episodes of season 2 and I had to stop. I think for me it just was too real, like too like I feel like this is 5 minutes from now and I kind of can't handle it at
That's
this
why
moment.
I'm staying away, because I'm like, do I really want to put myself through this?
Yeah,
And
no.
most of the time I do, but because the real world has gotten so bizarre,
Yeah.
it really affects the way that you enjoy your fiction.
Yes, it does.
Because
it does.
a lot of things like House of Cards used to be so like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you're like, oh my God.
I know.
It's
No,
not
I know.
that far off.
I know, and I love dystopian fiction and all that, but I have found it lately much more difficult to read than it used to be.
All right, so that's a great talking point. And I'm so curious, like, okay, you have right now all these little time capsules,
Yeah.
right? Like all these series that are lined up. You have many episodes done. They're just sitting, waiting to drop. The amount of things that could happen between now and the third weekend in October
Yeah.
is insane.
Yeah.
The things that could happen between now and 5 o'clock
Yeah.
are absolutely insane.
Yeah.
Is there a part of you that when you go through the news or you turn the news on that you're just like, oh, please?
Yeah, every once in a while that certainly happens.
Yeah.
Particularly when you are, when you're doing shows that touch on things that feel like they are in the real world
Right.
or real world adjacent.
Right.
You know, there was a lot of discussion when we were doing Scandal and Mellie Grant was running for president, against a male opponent, and there were a lot of people that were feeling like it was some sort of a Clinton-Trump conversation going on, and the two things were not related in any way, but you can't help but be sort of conscious of the outside world and how it's pertaining to your fictional scripted world. We had some episodes of Quantico, which, for whatever reason, suddenly felt like they were paralleling events that were happening in the real world and in real time. And yeah, you have to just be aware of that.
Yeah.
We've had, I'm trying to think of what it was now. There was an episode that we had that had a shooting in it that we ended up putting later in the order because it was going to air the same week as something.
I remember there was a show that was going to come out, right? You guys had to postpone it because it was too in line with the zeitgeist.
Yeah, I don't know if that was. I know we held an episode. I can't remember if it was a whole show that we held. That might have been
there was somebody.
else.
I think that was that show Shooter that I just got confused
That was on USA. That was on USA.
Which a bold time to put out a show called Shooter.
I know, but yeah, you have to. Because more than anything else, we want to be sensitive to how audiences are experiencing events in the real world, and you certainly don't want to put something on the air that's going to antagonize people or seem as though we are not being compassionate about events. Right?
I think that's the big thing.
This is fiction. We're just telling stories. We're
Right.
having fun. But if for whatever reason your fictional story has some real world parallels that are painful, we don't want to wallow in that.
Yeah, the escapism needs to kind of stay there
Yeah.
for things to be successful.
Yeah.
All right, so you pick these shows, you put them out into the world, which seems both exciting and just daunting all at once.
Yes.
Your job to me sounds so much it just sounds like so much fun. But then again, it also sounds like what a nightmare.
It's a combo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But when they go out into the world, now you have to watch them from a whole different perspective, right?
Yeah, but
because you're watching the stats, the numbers, the reaction.
You've had a little bit of, so we do these pilots, right? And you were asking, I keep coming away from this, but we were talking about, the storytelling, the investment in the characters and in that world. I'm looking, as we had mentioned before, at the auspices, who's the showrunner, who's the creative voice, do I trust their vision? And then, of course, we do research, right? We test all these pilots. We do focus groups nationally at this point now. The fact that you're able to sort of digitally stream content into people's homes, we're actually able to get really great data because you're no longer relying on 40 people who are going to drive out to some place in Reseda and watch it.
Right.
We get it across the country. We get all different demographics, and it's that part's wonderful because the data is that much more accurate. So that feeds into the decision too. So you already have a little bit of a sense of how people are going to perceive things, and yet that premiere night, and I'm not really a Twitter user. I find that feels like it's just a space where everyone's yelling at each other.
You're
all
not
the
really
time.
a social media person.
Yeah, not hugely. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm social media just with my friends,
Yeah.
but Twitter, it's like it's like a cacophony of yelling is what it feels like to me. But I do like to go in when shows premiere because you kind of want to see the reactions
Yeah.
from people real time.
That's a
good,
bold
bad, or
move.
indifferent. You just
It's a
kind of
bold
want to
move.
watch it unfold, and you see the East Coast feed and then the West Coast feed, and
Yeah.
and then. But I mean, what is exciting is when people connect with the show and it starts right out of the gate to become their show, right? Because you are at the end of the day, you're I mean, I'm not personally the storyteller, but we're telling stories,
Right.
hopefully to move people, to engage
Right.
people, to make them feel something. And when that happens, when a show connects, there's literally no better feeling.
I can only imagine when it clicks,
Yeah.
fires on all cylinders, and you can be like, oh, they're crying at this moment that we beautifully set up, or they feel happy that the father and son are united or
Yeah.
whatever. But what about when that doesn't happen? Because a lot of us listening,
Yes.
we've had to fire a person.
Yes.
Firing a show
Yes.
is firing an army of people.
Yes.
There's a lot of weight between it's got to come off.
Yes. So the harder, and I mean, one of the things that's really challenging right now, particularly with broadcast, is, the ratings and the way they're measured keeps getting smaller and smaller and
Right,
smaller. So
right.
you're, it used to be when I first got into this business, you're like, your show is doing a 12 rating or it's doing a 4 rating. Gotta go. You know what I mean? Now,
Which I have looked at how those numbers are calculated.
Yeah.
And I still can't wrap my head around what does a 3 share actually mean? Like,
Yeah,
it's very
I know.
hard for
It's
me to
all
figure
very
out.
like mathy and,
Yeah.
and random. But now you're talking about, well, this show's doing a 0.9, so it's doing really well. This show's doing a 0.6, so it's not doing really well. You know, the numbers are so tiny at some points that you're talking about that it feels really random.
What would be the amount of humans in that 0.6 to 0.9?
But see, that's also the thing that is hard to, because, and I'm just saying this because when you're talking about that, you're talking about the share of the demo, the 18 to 49-year-olds, which
Yep.
is not the same as household or total viewers.
Right.
Right. So you can actually have a pretty decent number of total viewers,
But
if
not the right people.
But if your demo number is really, really low, then that's hard. Right?
So crazy.
It's so crazy. So what a lot of times ends up happening is if a show isn't doing well and is consistently not doing well, the writing's kind of on the wall, and it's usually not that much of a surprise that you end up having to cancel it. Although there have been moments where I've been going to make those calls, and it literally feels like it's dawning on somebody like this is the first time they've heard that their show is in trouble, which is always kind of surprising.
Yeah.
But I am a big believer in honest conversation. I try to be very collaborative with my showrunners and my producers, and I'm very accessible in terms of talking as we go through the process. Like, how are we doing? You know, could we be doing more? Is there anything we could be doing with marketing? Is there a stunt that we could try to sort of juice the, get some fresh eyes in here? And so, hopefully by the time you get to the point of saying either we have to pull it or we're not renewing it for another season, that it's a conversation that you've been having along the time.
So it's not out of the blue.
No, I mean, I think that is.
It's not like we see on TV, you're in a convertible car shooting out the Malibu with the earpiece in, like, hey, baby, it's not happening. Doesn't work that way?
No, it does not work that way. I know. Yeah, no. Maybe for some people, not for me.
Not your style.
No.
Hey, friends, thank you so much for hanging out with me today with Channing Dungey of ABC. Are you having fun? Like, aren't you just kind of amazed at how chill and cool and laid back she is, and just sounds like any other guest, not even putting into your mind exactly what her job is and the weight that comes with a job of this unimaginable level to achieve in life. Coming up in part 2 for members of the Circle of Trust, hey, do yourself a favor and sign up at aidpodcast.com to support Adventures in Design, unlock our archive, and get the second part of today's show. I asked Channing, can she remain a fan? You know, you get too close to something in life and then you start to resent it, or all the players involved, and it can kind of ruin it for you. So I want to know, can you still sit down and enjoy TV? We also talk about her making history. She's just living her life, taking opportunity after opportunity, gets promoted in this position, and guess what? The next thing you know, every newspaper headline is first African-American female president of a TV network. And boom, there she is. She made history. Rarely in life do you get to sit across from someone that sets one of those historic professional, personal achievements. I had to know, how does it make you feel? How does it make you feel when you're simply just trying to be you and live your life, and the next thing you know, you're the face of something? I mean, obviously there would be an amount of pride in there, but does it change it for you? Do people try to change you? Does it affect you? It just was something that I've just been dying to ask anyone that is lucky enough or fortunate enough or worked hard enough to actually change history. And then on the other side of her career, the elephant in the room, what was it like the day that she just woke up to her phone exploding and going, I probably got to fire Roseanne Barr today? All of this and so much more is coming up for you in part 2 of Adventures in Design, only available for members of the Circle of Trust. As you've heard today, not a lot of ads. This podcast is funded by the people that listen to it, and I wouldn't have it any other way. I'm out here trying to find interesting people to bring back to you great conversations that are educational, entertaining, hopefully make your day a little bit better. And I do that for you 5 days a week, 200 episodes a year, and that's all made possible by the people that listen to the show. Sign up today at aidpodcast.com. Hear Channing explain to you what she thinks attributed to her level of success. And let's just end it all with talking about TV, this thing that's raised us, this thing that we love, this thing that's a part of our culture, it's a part of our existence. Let's just talk about it like fans. And then once again, it just shows the unimaginable relatability that she has even though she's in a position in life that's not very relatable to many of us. It's Channing Dungey, part 2 on Adventures in Design, 819.
I think the hard, because when something's out of the gate really strong, like our show, The Good Doctor, kind of came out last fall,
Right.
strong, stayed strong all year, great. Sometimes you have a show that just doesn't really connect out of the beginning, and then you're like, the harder are the ones that are kind of hovering in this like netherworld, like it's not bad, but it's not really, and I don't know. And those are the toughest ones because they usually hang on all the way up until the decisions are made for the next year.
Yeah.
And then it becomes a little bit of a conversation of, well, this show's doing this. Do we believe that one of the new pilots could do better? Or
Right.
should we do
I've
this
learned
again?
that you guys judge, like, but how strong is it for the 8:30 on Wednesday slot? Like,
yeah.
it becomes about holding that time slot, right? A little bit,
To
if
a
it's
little
on the
bit.
fence.
Yeah, and I think it's also like, do you feel, we had a couple of shows, they call it on the bubble, right? We had a couple of shows last year that were on the bubble where we felt that for whatever reason, there were, like with one show, we had some pretty significant cast changes between the pilot and the series. And they were kind of then as a result, like running behind the whole time. And we felt like, but there's a lot of potential here. We really believe in this cast. We believe in this showrunner. Like, this feels like a bubble show worth taking another shot with. And then there were others where you felt like, well, there was a loyal but very passionate group of fans, but it was a very small group, and it's hard to justify bringing that one back for a second go. But it's hard, the calculus of all this, and it's not a perfect system, because sometimes the ones you bet on end up not coming together, and sometimes the ones you should have maybe given another chance to, maybe that was the one that could have.
Right. One that.
You have to kind of go with your gut.
Do the fan petitions work? And does it work in a way where, NBC is going to let go of this, but there's a ripple in the pond?
Well,
Do
that
we
was
grab
the
it?
craziest thing that happened this year with Brooklyn Nine-Nine, which I'm sure you were tracking. That
knew?
was unbelievable.
Who knew?
Right? Even the people involved in it were like, what?
Yeah.
I think that, I there have been times in my life where I've been an avid fan. Like, I was like a rabid X-File back in the day. And,
Yeah.
So I understand how it is to be a fan and to like want the show to continue at any cost. I would say that every once in a while, the outpouring of support from the fans can move a needle, but usually that's because it's already so close to, like it's on the bubble, but it's already teetering.
Right.
That becomes the last little thing that pushes it over the edge.
Yeah.
Whereas I find that most often the really boisterous, vociferous groups are the ones that are pushing for a show that is, it barely has a heartbeat, but they're pushing for it.
Yeah.
And then it's hard because sometimes you get, and they are very creative in the things that they'll send to your offices and the petitions that they'll do online and the email blasts that come through. But it's not going to be enough to revive a show that's dormant.
I know enough about the industry to see some of the wild ideas from fans, and I go, only a fan could think that way.
Oh, yeah.
Nobody in the industry would even remotely have an idea of, like, this is what you should do to Disneyland. I'm like, I love your sentiment. They're not putting in a Lady in the Tramp ride. The ship has sailed. It's not happening.
Yeah.
So, Channing, like, you've made it at this unbelievable level in business and in the entertainment business, which is known to be one of the hardest businesses ever. Like, what do you think helped you to get this far up the ladder? Thank you for listening to Adventures in Design podcast. To hear part 2 of today's episode, visit adventuresin.design. Click where it says Circle of Trust and help support the only daily talk show designed for creative professionals just like you. Thank you for listening. Good day and good design.